Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Nathan Pomart and this is Loose, the Climate Tech podcast. Every week we interview a founder and explore the stories, ideas, innovations, and businesses behind some of the most inspiring climate tech companies that have a tangible positive impact on our planet. This show is designed to help you learn, instigate optimism, and inspire further action towards addressing the climate change challenge that we face as a global community. If you are an entrepreneur, business leader, or investor interested in learning more about the climate tech space and how you can play a part in it, this show is for you. My guest today is Anders Korsgaard. Anders is the CEO and co-founder of Blueward Technologies. A Denmark-based manufacturing startup, Blueward is a developer and manufacturer of methanol fuel cells components and systems. Fuel cells enable the conversion of liquid fuel, such as methanol, into electricity. As such, they play a critical role in the shift away from carbon-emitting combustion engines and diesel generators. They are particularly promising candidates in sectors such as on-site industrial power generation, maritime shipping, and heavy-duty transportation. Blueward recently announced a €37 million Series B investment where Bill Gates-backed Breakthrough Energy Ventures entered as a new investor alongside the Danish sovereign investment fund and Deutz AG, a large German combustion engine manufacturer. A repeat founder, Anders and his co-founders started Blueward after another successful startup in the fuel cell space. That is the focus of our discussion. In this episode, you will learn about what grid fuels exist today and compare the relative merits of e-methanol compared to ammonia and hydrogen, what the green premium is and why it is set to significantly come down by 2030, what fuel cells are and the role they can play in drastically improving the efficiency of running on green fuels, and which sectors are set to benefit the most from these innovations, and get some insights into the path those sectors will take to make their green transition. I hope you enjoy my discussion with Anders Korsgaard. You can find out more about Blueward on their website, blue.world. Check out the links we mentioned on the episode page. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on your favorite podcast app and stay tuned for more insightful conversations with some of the most inspiring climate tech founders. So, Anders, I'm very excited for this conversation. You and your company, you are working on some truly cutting edge technology to address some of the key carbon emitting sectors. So, I'm really glad to be recording this. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and glad to be here.
And so, maybe we can start with, what's the story for you behind starting Blueward? You're a repeat entrepreneur, so tell us a bit about how you ended up focusing on what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. So we, as the founders, has sort of been working in the industry for the last 20 years. I actually co-founded a company with the CTO of Blue World back in 2006 that we sold in the mid-tens, and we decided to leave that company in 2018. So that's sort of the background. So we have worked in the fuel cell space. We worked with methanol. We were all over that. Also very deep into commercialization phase. When we left the company, we actually didn't know that we were going to start up Blue World. That was sort of a decision that arose. But basically, when we're talking the green transition and decarbonization and so forth, it's actually not as much about whether it's going to be green or not. Of course it is. So it's about the green. Mm-hmm. It is what is the cost of going green. And basically what we learned in the past that we had sort of in the fuel cell industry, and in particular with the fuel cell technology we're working with, the high temperature PEM, basically the barrier actually for any commercialization would be industrialization as a keyword. So we founded Blue World to industrialize that core technology that's called the high temperature PEM cell technology, really take it to the mass production level. That's sort of the mission we are on, and basically use that as a leverage. When it's industrialized, we can enable the use of e-fuels or the power to X. So everything that comes out of the hydrogen, green hydrogen production, it could be e-methanol, e-ammonia, those sort of fuels, will probably be somewhat more expensive than traditional oil-based products. And
And so, Anders,
yeah,
for those of us who are not super familiar with the technology that you're working on, how do you explain it in simple terms? What is high temperature PEM? What
yeah,
are fuel cells?
okay,
What do they enable, and why do they enable something that is more green
yeah.
than existing solutions?
Sure. So essentially, a fuel cell is a device that converts any given fuel to electricity. And the advantage of fuel cells in general is that they operate more efficiently, typically, than internal combustion engines or generators. And that's basically the value proposition of a fuel cell. That is, or at least the main one, because lowering the amount of fuel used is also a way to decarbonize, because that will enable the use of these fuels. When it comes to the high temperature PEM fuel cells in particular, we are much better at working with liquid fuels. So that could be e-methanol in particular, which is one of our focus areas. And the reason for that is that our complete system efficiency, so basically how much energy do we lose when we convert from the fuel to the electricity, we have the same efficiency whether we work with hydrogen or we work with e-methanol. It's sort of the same conversion efficiency, and thereby we drastically lower the fuel consumption as opposed to using e-methanol in a combustion engine.
And can you talk a bit about which end industries are your products and your solutions being used?
Yeah. So as I said before, we have been using the first. We were founded sort of close to 4 years ago. We have been working mainly on the industrialization. So that is building up a factory for the cell manufacturing. That's sort of the core of it. That's the heart of everything we do. Now, where is this technology applicable? Yeah, and we are launching a product in not so long time for the stationary space. And stationary means smaller diesel genset replacement, in particular in the developing countries, but also in Europe and the US. That will drastically lower the fuel consumption as opposed to using a diesel genset. That's good for sort of the pocket, so you're saving a lot of cash, but it's also good for the environment because you're saving a lot of carbon dioxide. So that's sort of the first market we're going to, the replacement of stationary diesel genset with highly efficient, low fuel consumption, and basically without any harmful emissions devices, and that's the fuel cells. Yeah.
Okay, got it. On your website, you also refer to long range transportation and the maritime sectors.
Yeah.
Are those also sectors that you're going after?
And yes, definitely, and in particular when you mention the maritime, in connection with an announcement with Breakthrough Energy investing together with Deutz and end of August, it also came out that we will enter into a new vertical. For the stationary market, we are developing complete solutions. We are about to launch them. For the maritime market, it's something that we will invest heavily into. And why is that? So you could say that the stationary market is sort of the enabler for the revenue of and maturing the company, the operations, the production, everything. But when we look a little bit beyond 2025, actually one of the biggest impact markets we have, corresponding to the world, about 3% of the world's CO2 emissions, is the maritime market. And we will be heading full-fledged into that, investing heavily into developing complete solutions, of course, building on the same fuel cell units that we have built a factory for, but using them in a maritime environment in the hundreds of kilowatts into the megawatt range, replacing diesel gensets on board ships initially, but long term, even also the propulsion of ships.
Anders, can you talk a bit about how do you make a fuel cell? And the company, your company, stands out by having all the technologies and the core component manufacturing internally in your organization. So could you perhaps break what those steps are
Yeah.
to understand what is your input and what is the output of your process at the end of the day?
Yeah. So fundamentally, for a fuel cell, you have sort of three main components. You have the membrane, which conducts the protons in the cell. You have electrodes, so that's one on each side of the membrane, and then you have some separator plates. All of these are not industrialized where we were standing, or were not industrialized where we were standing 4 years ago. And so all of these components we sort of insourced into Blue World. For the membrane and electrode, we actually acquired a technology company that has been working with exclusively developing this high temperature PEM membrane and electrodes for the last 25 years. So we acquired that company a couple of years ago and have sort of merged them into our R&D efforts. And then for the separator plates manufacturing, this is one of the core research activities we started out 4 years ago to get that kicked in. So basically, we have reduced almost 2 orders of magnitude the cycle time to produce one separator plate. So this one was one very big bottleneck for any commercialization, together with the membrane and electrode. And now we merged that in together and built up the factory with production lines for all the three main components. That has been set up, and we are currently running the pre-series production right now, and are expecting to go into series production with those components within the next 6 months or so.
What is the input that you take at the start of your process? Is it you basically buy methanol or other
No, the
fuels
methanol is sort of the fuel you would supply to our equipment that we sell. So basically, we are
Got
an
it.
equipment manufacturer, and then you basically have fuel suppliers. Those fuel suppliers could. There's a lot of e-methanol manufacturers out there that's currently building up factories, and so those will sort of be supplying our customers with fuel, and we will be supplying the conversion equipment, the fuel cell. So what is
Got
going
it.
into our production is basically raw commodities to manufacture those three core components, so the membrane, electrodes, and the separator plates. They're coming in, and these are commodities of the world market. So we're not relying on anyone sitting on the oxygen line for our operations. It's sort of the challenges we had in the past, actually, to be honest. That if the value chain from basically the raw commodities to the end solution are not fully aligned in the first years of commercialization, then it often fails because one party is investing more or less or giving up, and it creates a lot of disturbances. So that's why we are sort of having the complete vertical, raw commodities going in solutions, and then we outsource as much as we can, but we are basically controlling all the steps to the end customer.
So to put it in very simple terms, you're building an engine that enables your customers to use potentially green fuels such as e-methanol to replace diesel generators in their industrial or transportation processes.
Exactly.
And sorry, go ahead.
That's fine. You go ahead.
And so that sits within the a term that you use sometimes, the power to X transition.
Yeah.
Could you perhaps help our listeners understand what is the power to X trend, and where do you fit into this?
Yeah. So basically, what the world has sort of realized in the last 10 to 20 years is that if we should have fuels in the future, the only way we can get enough fuels is by making them out of electricity. So biogenic resources of energy is not sufficient for what we want to resolve within maritime, the heavy duty, all of those areas. And so we need to have e-fuels present, and that is basically fuels that you make out of electricity. So one of the most familiar ones that people might know is hydrogen, where basically you take electricity, you take water, you make electrolysis, and then you have hydrogen. It's a super simple process. The only problem about hydrogen is that it's gaseous. So either you need to freeze it down to minus 272 degrees Celsius, and then it's liquid, but that's 1 degree above the absolute zero temperature. So that's pretty unpractical. Some people are working on it, but it's not very practical. The other way is basically to pressurize it to 300 bars or 2 or 300 bars. And that's also very expensive in terms of the tank itself, and the infrastructure is also very difficult. So instead, in particular for the maritime, people are looking into sort of combining that hydrogen with something that makes it liquid. So that could either be carbon dioxide or it could be nitrogen. So if you could take nitrogen, you can create ammonia. Of course, that's completely CO2 free. Then you don't use any carbon to make it. That's really the advantage of ammonia pathway. And the only issue here is that to get it liquid, you need to pressurize it, and ammonia is extremely toxic. So there is a lot of safety concerns and regulations that needs to be developed, and that's really, will it then happen? That's a question mark. What we can do today is to source renewable biogenic CO2 molecule. That could be out of biogas, or that could be out of municipality waste, or it could even be out of the free air, so to speak. Then when we're starting to do CO2 sequestration, and then you take that CO2 and combine with the hydrogen to make methanol. Then you have a born liquid molecule or a fuel that you can use and distribute using the existing channels of distribution. You can store it in the same facilities as you store diesel and gasoline. You can put it even into existing vehicles. If they operate on gasoline, you can blend in some methanol and then make it more green. Or you can put it only to operate, make engines or to operate only on methanol. And that's really why you see the movement in the maritime space now going towards e-methanol. Because the big container ship owners, they can, such as Maersk, they can take an engine and then a two-stroke engine, and then they can make it dual fuel. So they can take the old marine diesel or whatever, and they can take methanol and put into the same engine. And if they don't get methanol one day, they can still use the old stuff. So you don't have the chicken and the egg issue. And same thing goes with the technology on the ship, the conversion technology. They can go with the combustion engine. They can use that. The efficiency, yes, is lower than a fuel cell, but they can start out. And then when the fuel cell is ready, they can sort of replace that gradually. First for some of the APUs, that's the power generation devices on the ships. Then they take all the APUs, and at last they also maybe even take the two-stroke propulsion engines out. But it's sort of, it's an evolution. And that's what industry like, right? Because taking a bet that e-methanol will be there and fuel cells will be there in 5 years for Maersk, and ordering a ship for that is never going to happen. It's simply not going to happen. That they are going to order, replace the 700 ships around the globe with technologies that are not proven. So we need to have a more gradually, step-by-step transition. And that is what e-methanol offers. And that's why we're working with this.
Anders, on your website, you have this super interesting map, and I'll put a link to it for our listeners at the end of the episode, of the different stakeholders that are, working towards methanol as a renewable fuel for the future. Today, if people go and look up how do you make methanol, they will see that a big portion of it is made with coal in China, for example. So there is clearly a change that needs to happen in the way we make methanol to make it in a way that is CO2 neutral.
Yeah.
So who are the main stakeholders, or what are the main things happening in that space that are making you confident that we are moving towards e-methanol and not just methanol?
Yeah, I think it's you're completely correct that methanol is out there, and that's actually really advances. It's mainly made from natural gas, but also from coal, as you say. When Maersk want to decarbonize, they wouldn't.
That's the Danish shipping company, right?
That's one of the big container shipping companies in the world. And when they decarbonizing, of course, they will not decarbonize with something that is a derivative of coal. So they will only source e-methanol, and that is to a certain extent, at least for the last one and a half year, that is what has been sort of driving the industry now. That the industry can really see, that's the hydrogen production industry, can really see there's a customer out there that will take millions of tons of e-methanol, that wants to put down those orders. And that is driving a lot of the movement that is happening right now. So some years ago, there was a lot of research projects and some demo plants and so forth. But nowadays, it's completely different. It's set out
Got
for
it.
real industrialization. It is happening. It will happen. And that's really, I must say that I really admire the bold step that Maersk took.
Yeah.
But as I said before, it's only as bold as, if something fails, they can still use the old stuff, right?
Sure. Yes.
But still, they're going out ordering more than 10 ships for those dual fuel diesel or marine fuel oil and methanol. So I think it is a really, really good step, and putting down the purchase orders actually for procuring that methanol actually just made all the energy companies, in particular in Northern Europe, jump into this and putting up
Yes.
power to X plants. And they're every day, I wouldn't say, but at least every quarter, there's a new plant being announced. So I think it is happening.
Today, when Marx, the shipping company, makes these changes, they effectively are paying a green premium. If I'm not mistaken,
Yes,
they
definitely.
accept that it's a higher cost.
Yeah.
However, you are looking ahead to 2030, and you are saying the green premium will go down to almost zero.
Yes.
What will enable that?
There's basically two things. So first of all, let's say there's three cornerstones here. So despite right now we see very high electricity prices, but we did see year over year decreases in leverage cost of energy, going down on renewable offshore windmills, whatever, 15 to 20%. Same thing with solar. If you sort of look towards 2030, and we have all those new electricity producing renewable sources, windmills and solar, maybe even nuclear in the future, those in combination, you see that the leverage cost of energy will go down. It's not going up, it is going down. We have a spike here because of the energy crisis, but it will go down long term. Second thing that needs to happen is that the power to X companies out there, they are also industrializing the way they are making the electrolyzers, the methanol synthesis, all of that. That's being scaled dramatically as we speak right now. So that will also drive down the cost or the capex of that equipment, also the efficiency of actually making methanol. And then the last part is on our end is efficiency gains in the use of those fuels, and this is where fuel cells comes in, reducing
That's where you
somewhere.
come in.
Yeah, that's basically, for the stationary, we were looking maybe up to 80% reduction in fuel consumption. For the large maritime engines, of course, they are already pretty efficient. So there we may be only talking about 20 to 40% reduction in fuel consumption. But those are the components, basically, in our vision, energy on the other side of 2030 will be green, and it should be cheaper than today, because cheap energy enables very low inequality as well. The higher the energy prices, the more instability we will have in the world, and basically it will be the poor people of this world who's paying the bill, and that just won't work. In particular, not if we want to have the developing world sort of changing to a green agenda as well. Then it needs to be at or even lower than the energy prices we see today.
Anders, if we shift gears to the way you interact with your customers, the way you go to market, can you talk a bit about the cycles that you go through with your customers? I imagine there is a lot of co-development, maybe with some of them, or is that not the case? How do you go about generating revenues and engaging with your customers?
Yeah. So basically, we have those two sort of verticals that we really focused on: the stationary and the maritime. There we are working mostly with sort of the end users, all the way to the ship owners, and in the stationary case, the last fleet owners. So that could be in the telecom industry, telecom operators, and so forth. There we actually all the way to the end, learning what they want to have, making sure that the service levels are there and provided, that the fuel infrastructure, everything is set. So that's sort of a classical way for new market entry. So we really need to make sure that everything works all the way to the end. Then we have the other markets, which is basically something with wheels on it. So that could be everything from trucks to cars to off-road machinery and so forth. There's no way that we are also going to step into that space typically what you see is that either you sort of you go as a component supplier, even maybe a joint venture partner for some of those OEMs or tier ones, or you actually try to go all the way and making a truck company, and we are not going to
Yeah.
do the latter. So there's a lot of guys out there trying to sort of take those verticals all new. We definitely want to support those efforts with great sales technology, also helping educating those customers, OEMs, tier ones, and so forth. But we are not going to take on those efforts ourselves completely. The sourcing, manufacturing, service, all of that. This is not the business we are in. So that's sort of taking sales out of our cell production and delivering to partners.
Where are you today? We talked about the journey, the genesis of your company. Could you give us a sense of the company's size, offerings? How big is the team? How big is your revenue today?
Yeah. So just on the overall, we are, as I said before, we are right now in pre-series of our cell production. There will be a little offset towards delivering complete systems and solutions and putting that into series production. So that's going to be somewhat in the first half, towards the end of the first half of next year. We are already engaged with end customers. It's not like we are not in the market. We are in the market. We have sales teams. We have service teams out there. And we are working with the strategic customers. We are already there and have pleasure supplied units and so forth. But in terms of sort of more widespread sales, this is something we're going to do from approximately middle next year. Amongst others, also through one of our partners, it's Deutz, who invested also in this round with Breakthrough. We have an agreement basically to leverage their complete sales and service network, 850 locations across the world, more than 100 countries they are present, and basically they're leveraging their strength in sales and service area, so we don't have to build up that. In the initial phases, we are sort of also in direct engagement with some of the end customers, but long term, we will be more and more leveraging that cooperation.
What are the obstacles that today may prevent a potential customer to actually becoming a customer? What are the remaining barriers that you need to help them get past in order for this solution to get more widely adopted?
I think that the market for methanol fuel cells, the demand for that is really there, and it has been there not only for the last years, it's been there for the last 10 years. We've worked in that space before. The market is, the customers are true and sincere and are sending out tenders basically to get that equipment going. So there's a true need for that. So I think the risk on that end is not as great. It's actually on our ability to deliver, to build up our pre-series production, to come into series production, to make sure that our products are in full compliance with what they expect. That's sort of the key sort of struggles we have right now. It's and of course we are moving forward, but it's there's definitely a big challenge to take everything from basically raw commodities coming in, chemicals and what have you, to deliver complete solutions with big data involvement, fleet service monitoring, all of that. So we are tightly bound all the way across. So it is a big operational challenge, so to speak, to get all that going in one.
You announced, I think 2 weeks ago or 2 or 3 weeks ago, that you completed a 37 million Series B. So first of all, congratulations. That's very exciting. And second, what have been the key steps in the fundraising journey leading up to that? And what investors have you chosen and have also chosen you to partner with in this journey? You already mentioned some of them.
Yeah. So I think maybe just a little bit back to the beginning. So we were founded in 2018. We had a seed round just by the end of 2018 of 6.4 million euro. That meant that we were fairly quickly off again, hiring in more like 30, 40 people along those lines. Then we were supposed to raise a larger equity round in the beginning of 2022, and we all know what happened at that point in time. So sort of
Yeah.
nobody was able to travel. It was completely impossible to get the big international.
2022 or 2020?
So 2020, sorry.
Okay. Yes.
2020 in the midst of the COVID, and it was sort of impossible to get investor visits and so forth. So we actually what
Sure.
we did was actually to raise another 8 million euro round with smaller individuals, so that could be smaller family offices down to individuals. We raised 8 million there to sort of get us moving again. And went through sort of the worst parts of the COVID in that way. And then in the early mid 2021, we started engaging with the discussion with the Deutz and some months after, actually, Breakthrough reached out to us to ask, what direction we were in, were we going to do anything about the maritime, and the sort of. So that was sort of moving a little bit offset, and that's also actually also why there was 2 news coming out, because basically we didn't want to delay the closing with Deutsche Wechsfonten, which the first close was end of 2021, and then the second close was this spring, and then basically Breakthrough catched up and then sort of joined in one big round, and of course Breakthrough also brings both Deutsche and Wechsfonten are also sort of prominent players in the investment space with a lot of competences and network and so forth. But to get Breakthrough on board is sort of in a more global scale. They're definitely a more substantial partner in the sense of network and so forth.
Absolutely, and maybe not everyone in the audience knows Breakthrough Energy. So it's a Bill Gates founded company, right? In 2015.
Yeah, exactly.
Very involved in investing and accelerating innovation in sustainable energy.
Yeah, I think actually, but their great vision is sort of to find the technologies that is going to enable net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And then they basically take all the different business areas of the world where we have CO2 emissions, everything from agriculture to transportation and so forth. And then they just break it down. And for the maritime space, basically they looked at, okay, this is probably going to be methanol and methanol fuel cells that's going to help decarbonize the maritime world. And then they looked into that space and found us and say, okay, where are you on that journey? And that's why we just sort of came together.
Anders, we talked about everything that you are doing, and it's truly an inspiring story. Clearly, you're not doing this alone. So, can you tell us about what are the key roles in your team? What are the key skills that you need to have around you?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that you will probably be hiring, given the recent raise. So it may be good to talk a bit about what type of people would be a good fit to join your team.
Yeah. So maybe first, we are 112 FTEs, so 120 associated with Blue World right now. We have a founding team of 3. So that is Mads Bang, the CTO, it's Mads Friis, the Chief Commercial Officer. And when we started the company, we agreed we need to have a management of 6 in total. Sort of because we are entrepreneurs, we are good at something, but we need some guys with more corporate skills. And so these are the remaining part of our executive group. That's the CFO, that's the Chief Operating Officer, and that's the Chief Procurement Officer. So basically, we are a management group of 6. We have in the company everything that a traditional manufacturing company will have. So that is everything from procurement, supply chain, quality control, manufacturing technology, and then we jump into the research area. It's everything from chemical industry to electronics and data-driven systems and so forth, all the way to the commercial end. So we are pretty wide sort of set of competences in the company right now, and luckily we've been able to recruit so really great talent there. Both some of them that we've worked with before, but definitely also from people from the major manufacturing companies of Denmark. So a good mix of skills there from corporate and startup.
Anders, before we wrap up, what has been your main learning from this and from your entrepreneurial journey to date that you think might be relevant for others out there, maybe in the early stage of building a climate tech company or considering it?
I think that what we are pretty good at is to make an ambitious plan, but always keep our eyes also on the feet, so to speak. You need to be ambitious. You need to have bold visions. But if we didn't have sort of always a plan B in our back of our head, for instance, when COVID hit us, now we have another situation with the global supply chains. Things are not steady around you, and that adaptation basically, and always to keep an eye out to make sure that the first priority is that there's a day after tomorrow, right? So that sort of mix is really important to keep an eye on. That is sort of a mixed approach there, because otherwise, there was a guy telling me that there's two reasons why a startup doesn't work, and the first is greed, and the other one is impatience. And I actually think that they're pretty right. Those words. There are probably more to it than that. But
Yeah.
But to put it pretty stated, that's sort of the two reasons.
Anders, thank you very much for taking the time today. It's been super interesting to dive into what you're building and the fuel cell value chain and ecosystem. We hope to hear more about you going forward. Thank you, and see you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. Bye-bye.
You can find out more about Blue World on their website, blue.world. Check out the links we mentioned on the episode page. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on your favorite podcast app and stay tuned for more insightful conversations with some of the most inspiring climate tech founders.